It's a full house. So I want to remind you as we get started to use technology responsibly during the presentation. That means putting your phone on silence. Also, putting aside what other business you have going on, just paying attention for a little while. It's really important. There's a question and answer session at the end of every presentation. That's an important part of the SE tradition. Make sure that you honor the fact that the student has the floor. During that time, if you want to ask questions, it's fantastic. We encourage both staff and students to do that, but make sure it is a question. The fact that there are so many people in this room leads me to believe that the young woman here needs no introduction, but it gives me great pleasure to introduce Carla Parsons.
Today's topic is interpretation of poetry. Page number 28, perspective. Rajan Damodaran, you will recite the poem. And Ishan Nandishwaravasti, yes, you will explain the meaning of it. Right? You may begin, Rajan.
Perspective. When I look from above, you're a wide open sky, a world full of clouds that catches my eye, until the great elephant to his thirsty attends, or diving deep down, a group of my friends, or a bicycle bell, a stone on the soil, or a blind man's cane that causes you to recoil. Only then do I realize who you actually are. We see you as you are, river so dear.
Very good. Now, Ishan Nandishwaravasti, explain the meaning of the poem.
What we can see, we feel it's there. And what we cannot see, we feel it's not there. But sometimes what we see is actually not there. And what we don't see actually is there. I mean,
Is there, is not there, what nonsense you are talking? Very good, you explain.
the poet said that when he looks into the river, he sees the reflection of the sky in it. He then uses different objects like the elephant, the bicycle, bed, all this stone to demolish these reflections. Only then does he realize that it is a river.
Good, very good. You better sit down. So, children, the poem.
Hi, my name is Kara Zafria, and this term I studied the effect of poetry on young adults. I hope you enjoy my presentation. If emotions are the plug, poetry is the outlet. Why our pedagogical approach to poetry has to change. No one becomes a poet. We are all born poets. It's just that some of us choose to keep up the habit. Poetry has always been a crucial part of society. Never, however, has it been as misunderstood as it is today. In teaching poetry, many instructors locate authority within themselves, limiting the understanding young adults have of poetry. This makes poetry inaccessible to young adults, forcing students to find the answer the teacher is looking for, and failing to empower them to think and feel the poem authentically. Many teens have a very misguided idea of what poetry is. This ultimately is because of the way poetry is taught to them. This creates tension between the student and the teacher. As you saw in the first clip, there was a lot of tension between the student and the teacher because the student thought that he could analyze it in a way that was meaningful to him. However, the teacher did not ask for that, and that's where it goes wrong. Then, they also believe they can't grasp the hidden concepts that poetry contains. Teachers have a lot to do with these preconceived ideas that students have of poetry. In the essay titled Recreating Poets, How to Teach Poetry in the Classroom, Joshua Block outlines a way of teaching poetry that is student-centered. It encourages students to read and give students the authority over which poems are studied. According to Block, the experience of a poem is much different when hearing it read rather than reading it silently. I encourage students to bring in poems that resonate with them to share at the beginning of class. Block's method makes poetry feel accessible to students because it creates a comfortable environment in which to share thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Another reason students feel detached to poetry is because they misunderstand it. They come to believe they don't possess the necessary skills to decipher the meaning of the poem. As a student, I have attended many classes where poetry is taught as a wiki how-to selection. In a show of hands, how many of you remember memorizing the poem, The Raider? Everyone. Now, do you remember what it actually means? Do you remember the feeling it gave you when you read it? This is where it goes wrong. It's very formulaic. There's no room to diverge. The message always seemed to be, come to class, memorize a poem, and then hear a 60-minute lecture on the meaning of the poem, which means completely nothing to you, and you're left just looking at the teacher like, oh my God, what can she be done? This led young me, and probably you guys, to believe that other attempts to understanding the poem were wrong. All too often, students are taught there is only one correct way to analyze a poem. Teachers exclude alternative interpretations, even when they are valid, affecting the student's critical thinking skills in the long term. In these scenarios, instead of analyzing the poem, the student analyzes which answer the teacher wants and provides it. It's a great fallacy in the pedagogical approach to poetry. Joshua Block writes, when I tell students that we will be studying poetry, there are always some students who mutter, I can't write poetry. Students studying poetry should be fun and challenging for all students, regardless of the personal narrative they have about themselves as poets and writers. The reason then why students groan when faced with the task of reading and writing poetry is because they're not actually being asked to read poetry. Rather, they're being asked to read the teacher and the answer he or she wants. The poetess Warsan Shire describes a very different approach and its benefits. She says, I was 16 I was 16 and it was a poetry slam. I was very nervous. I didn't really understand what a poetry slam was. Then I won. My friends jumped around, but I think it has a lot to do with the way I approach readings. Shire felt like any adolescent feels at that age, vulnerable, insecure, and alone. But the experience of being able to open herself through poetry led her to become the poetess she is today. Poetry gave her an outlet for her feelings, something all teenagers need. Repressing these feelings can hinder mental health. That's why poetry inherently captures a lot of the complexity that the youth have a trouble articulating. When poetry is taught as an expressive art rather than an analytical exercise, it becomes useful to students. Teachers must carefully select which poems to teach first. A lot of times we were showing Shakespeare. We always expected, like, we're doing a poetry unit, Shakespeare, that's it. And Shakespeare is a wonderful poem. But what I'm trying to say is that teachers should not expect students to understand his work before understanding contemporary poetry. His work is in a language that is unfamiliar to us all. And I believe that the experience of a poem is most positive when students are introduced to poems in a vocabulary that is the one that we use day to day, language that is familiar to us. There's this fixed belief that in order to be successful as a writer or a poet, one must have an extensive vocabulary and know how to rhyme effortlessly, when none of these are true. Teachers like Joshua Block try to deconstruct this belief in order to make their students see that writing poetry does not necessarily need to mean structure. Amanda Gorman, a writer published by Huffington Post, validates my point that teens should be introduced to poetry at an emotional level. She says, I learned that writing poetry wasn't about pronunciation, but about style and the author's voice. This lesson helped me grow on endless occasions in my life, during school, conferences, competitions, etc., convincing me that poetry can possess astonishing influence when taught to teens. Teachers who disregard the emotive power of poetry over students' development ultimately hinder the student's ability to connect with the world in this way. From this, we know that at the very least, poetry is powerful. Youth is powerful. Combined, we produce enough power to change ourselves and change the world. For youth, poetry is far more than rhymes, pages, and pens. Students have all the rights to engage with words. However, if teachers do not encourage them to engage authentically with poems, they distance themselves from the art. Slam poetry is also a very powerful form of, it's a powerful example of the vital relationship between reader and writer. Slam poetry is a form of poetry in which poems are performed. By encouraging slam poetry in schools, teachers can encourage students to explore their poetic possibilities of spoken word performance. It's a way of performing emotion. Shane Coyson presented a TEDx on this short animated clip to this day. I hope you enjoy.
All the things we thought we used to do. If you can't see anything beautiful about yourself, look in a mirror. Look a little closer. Stare a little longer. Because there's something inside you that makes you feel satisfied. Everyone told you to fit. You built a castle and your broken arms on you upside. You don't belong. Because maybe you didn't belong to a group or a clique. Maybe they decided to pick you last on basketball or everything. Maybe you used to bring bruises and broken teeth to show and tell but never told. Because how can you walk around and everyone around you else you there? You have to believe that they were wrong. They have to be wrong. Why else would we still be here? We grew up learning to cheer on the underdog because we see ourselves in them. We stem from the root planted in the belief that we are not what we were called. We're not abandoned ourselves out into the empty on some highway. And if in some way we are, don't worry. We only got out to walk and get gas. We are graduating members from the class that we made. The faded echoes, voices crying out names will never hurt me. Of course, they did. But our lives will only ever always continue to be a balancing act that has less to do with pain and more to do with beauty.
I bet you felt something while you were watching that video, whether it be joy, sadness, or you didn't like it. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you're entitled to those feelings. This is the type of communication schools will foster when they incorporate slam poetry in their curriculum. And Coyson is not the only one using poetry to understand his childhood. Orson Shire is a well-known 28-year-old Kenyan poetess. She's the winner of the 2013 inaugural Brunel University African Poetry Prize. Shire published this poem Home to share the experience of displacement. She writes, "You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains, beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck, feeding on newspaper, unless the miles traveled means something more than journey. No one crawls on their fences. No one wants to be beaten and pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than a city of fire. And one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin could be tough enough." The way you're looking at me right now, this is exactly what poetry does. It incites empathy. You don't need to have gone to being a refugee to understand what Shire dealt with. When teachers teach that poetry should be felt, they give students access to the meaning of the poem. And schools benefit from allowing students to openly express their feelings, because in doing so, they come to understand themselves and their surroundings. on having to express your feelings, Shire writes, not everyone is okay with living like an open wound. But the thing about open wounds is that, well, you aren't ignoring it, you're healing. The fresh air can get to it. It's honest, you aren't hiding who you are. You aren't rotting. People can give you advice on how to heal without scarring badly. But on the other hand, there are some people who will feel uncomfortable around you. Some will even point and laugh, but we all have wounds. Shire recognizes that we all have wounds that need mending. For teens, especially true. Our bodies are changing, our hormones are imbalanced. And poetry allows for these feelings that we have to mature. In conversation with each other, we can emotionally evolve. So, now, what would this look like in a classroom? What I'm proposing is that at the beginning of every class, students should be given 10 minutes to free write. Then they would share previously workshopped poems and receive peer feedback. As the unit progresses, the teachers would bring in poems that are related to the poems that students are writing about. This way, students expand their poetic knowledge. This helps students discover the range of their own voice. Because poetry is voice, and the courage to use it. With this courage, we free ourselves and become capable of influencing others. Consequently, poetry's influence on young and old never seems to die, as its power refuses to weaken but grows with the passage of time. In other words, in a classroom that places authority within the students, poetry becomes an outlet in which writers use to express their feelings and emotions. It's a way for people to communicate. The wonderful part about teaching contemporary poetry then, by involving students in poetic discourse, is that it creates a sense of introspection that no other type of writing creates. And this has enormous psychological benefits. According to Gabe Bergato, researchers found that poetry stimulates parts of the brain linked to our resting states, a network of brain regions that are active when someone is just sitting and relaxing, and have also been linked to introspection. By allowing students the opportunity for introspection, we encourage both mindfulness and self-awareness. According to poet Amir Sulaiman, to write poetry, like sincere poetry, is like performing heart surgery on yourself without anesthesia in public. You're peeling back layers of yourself. You're dissecting yourself. You don't know what they're gonna do when you reach into yourself and rip your organs out to be displayed. And I know that might be a little graphic, but it's a process all writers go through. It's a way of healing by dealing with issues external to the self. Poetry gives students the verbal outlet they need in order to express themselves. And with this, I want to close with a quote by Audre Lorde. She said, "The transformation of silence into language and action is an act of self-revelation that always seemed fraught with danger. But my daughter, when I told her of our topic and my difficulty with it, said, 'Tell me how you're never really a whole person if you remain silent. Because there's always one little piece inside you that wants to be spoken out. And if you keep ignoring it, it keeps getting madder and madder and hotter and hotter. And if you don't speak out, one day it will just up and punch you in the mouth from the inside.' If we teach poetry as a healing art, we offer students a lifelong strategy for psychological wellness. Educators must reward curiosity, intuition, and emotional grounding. Yet this begs the question, how can teachers reward behavior if the pedagogical approach to teaching poetry is skewed? Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Dan.
What do you think gave rise to the current
Start, can you speak?
We need a little air, you guys. You're gonna have to talk loud this last second.
How do you think we reached a situation in which poetry is being taught more like an economic mechanical process that has a creative.
I think what happens a lot in schools is that teachers already have this idea of the way that they approach poetry, and it's since they're being told to grade their students, they're told like you need a grade for this student, they obviously need to have an answer that they want. Because as students, we find the answer that we want from the poem that the teacher wants, more because of the grade that we're being given. And I think that that has a lot to do with the way that poetry is approached. And that's like the main reason why it's so skewed right now, why there's such a big problem with not feeling the poem, not understanding it yourself, but reading what the teacher wants you to say. And I think we forget as students the power that we should have over the meaning that the poem should entice to us. Yes.
How do you know that there's a difference between the effect of poetry on students and other types of literature like prose?
If you didn't hear that back there, she said that, how do I know that poetry has more influence on students than any other type of writing? Well, actually, this is something I didn't include in my presentation, but I found a case study by Adam Seaman, where he put EEGs to measure the length waves of the way that students address poetry. And what he found, he gave them a piece of prose, a piece of poetry that they had already picked, and then a piece of poetry that the own student had picked. So basically a poem that they liked. And while they were reading it, Adam Seaman saw that parts of the brain linked to memory are fired up when you're reading poetry. So that's why you feel like you connect so much with it when you read a poem that you really like. Because it makes you think about your life and the things that you've dealt with. And much like Shire's poem Home, I saw many people really engaged while I was reading it. You don't have to have gone through that to understand it. It makes you feel empathy. It makes you really connect with it, with your own experience.
The other thing is also important when it's a chicken sense of poem, for the student to understand what the author is trying to say, other than like what he feels about the poem, the student feels about the poem. They also think that it's important to understand what the author's message is.
Oh yeah, of course, but what I'm trying to say with my solution, is that it's more student-centered. So instead of a teacher saying, this is the meaning of it, yeah, that's the meaning, you're wrong. Whatever you interpret is not valid. What I'm trying to say is, you can take meaning out of it, but it has to be your own. It's one you believe in. Because if you don't, then what's the point of even doing poetry?
What's a way for teachers to like teach that if you always say like poetry not to be like teaching like poetry that like anyone can do.
Yeah.
I don't think personally I want to like sort of like poetry. Obviously the teacher will change the mindset.
Well, this is something that has to start at a very early age, first of all. Because once you construct your views about something as a teenager and the way that we like to be about, no, this is my point, I'm defending it. And we sometimes don't see that actually other people are right. It has to start at an early age. Because you need to read, and what I'm trying to say is, no, there's obviously some kids that won't like it. And that maybe you don't like writing poetry, or you don't like reading it. But what I'm trying to say with this is to try to minimize that and try to have teachers not construct these ideas for them. Have them decide, I like poetry, I'm going to continue doing it. Or I don't, I like reading it. You know, like the first quote that I put was, no one becomes a poet. We are all born poets. It's just that some of us choose to keep up the habit. There it is. And I think that that's really true. And whatever view you have about it, you have to be open to others. Well, what I'm starting with, which is I think is the best way to start it, is in English. Because I have been through years of schooling here where we haven't done poetry at all. And I think that that's something that has to change even if the teacher doesn't like poetry. Because as a teacher, you also take responsibility to what you're teaching the child. And as students, for lack of a better word, we are molded a lot by what we're told in our formative years. And so if we're not even taught poetry or the teacher doesn't like it, then we believe that poetry should be disregarded, when actually so much of poetry helps you evolve as a human being and understand your feelings.
So currently at CMS, there's a course, a required course for juniors called SAT preparation. Would you go so far as to advocate that students would be equally well served by a class in poetry, or say reading and writing poetry? So when they were juniors, they could choose to take the test preparation course, or they could choose to take a class that was more like a creative writing class in poetry. Would that be equally beneficial to them in the big picture of college admissions, preparing their brain for the university experience? What do you think?
I think it's definitely a class that should be in the curriculum, and right now it's very overlooked. I think it's something, it can start as an elective, where students choose to do that if they want to pursue it. I found a very interesting research where they did this with a prison, with people in prison, and they realized that they had so much good influence on the people in prison because they realized they wrote poems every day for an hour, and then they would perform it. And the same people, I actually have a quote from it, they realized that, it's not here, but they realized that they were more in tune with their feelings and the way that they channeled them, that when they came out of jail, they actually felt like they weren't going to commit any crime again, because they felt like that helped them understand who they were, since so many criminals are part of domestic abuse, or they have a really bad childhood and they don't know how to deal with the feelings. This poetry allows them to deal with it without telling the people around them that that's actually what they're talking about.
So you spoke about Shakespeare and how the language to students may feel like it's inaccessible to some extent. So I'm wondering if you think if classic poetry where poets are not worth introducing, but should they be introduced and should they be a part of the lesson plan of the teacher? Or do you think that at this age it's relevant?
I don't think it's irrelevant at all. None of it is relevant, because that's where it started. It came from that. So you can't say that the past of poetry is irrelevant, because it's what shaped poetry now. And so what I say with Shakespeare is that teachers cannot expect their students to understand it if they don't understand poetry they're doing now, or if they're not familiar with it. So if you think your students are prepared and they're ready and you see that they're engaged with it, totally. But as a teacher, if you see that your child is like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't like poetry, I think that starting with Shakespeare might not be the best choice.
So you suggest going into that kind of poetry after you introduce something? Yes,
definitely.
I really want to facilitate education. So because the education system in general is changing, it's increasing the amount of tests for students. Do you think this is a way you are going to implement or start changing the education system? As I know you can't really sure that you're not for the development of the child in poetry or the way
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't like the way the school system is right now because of what I was saying about the grade. Students pursue that grade without really learning. And so they're not taking the benefits that the teachers are giving them. Rather, they're just working for a grade that would not make them suitable for finding a job or doing other things in life that aren't just about grades. And so what I'm trying to propose is that people realize that, first of all, the school system has to change. The way that we're being taught right now is not the best way for us to graduate and to be practical learners in life. And second of all, I think that poetry has to be introduced in all subjects when the time comes. Because right now we can't just bombard students with like, we're going to start this now. That's not the way of doing it. You have to start little by little. And I hope that this presentation helps some people in here realize that they're not bad at poetry, or they can read a little bit more poetry and realize that there are other authors that don't have to be classical poetry. Does that answer your question?
I'm really proud of you. We didn't get challenged to get something a few years. We figured out a way how to work that, especially now, where other people are anticipating. It's just the same way you can say you're not good at poetry for the students. I'm good at that. And that's something very frustrating, especially from sort of the first years. So I really want to get into the years.
Okay.
So I think like it's a very good idea what you're saying with the poetry classes and whatnot. But like there's always like a question, how would you like grade, like how would you like what criteria would you use? Like what certification would you choose like like grade students or like exam stuff? Because you might say, well, like we're all born poets and whatnot, and like we all have it, but at the end of the day, like what most issue is like you will have that like excellence when it's based on like what you learn. But like in terms of like the number, that is what called sadly the college football.
Well, the thing about this is that when reading a poem, you can easily say like, I get this feeling because of this line. So if you can validate your point on what the meaning of the poem is, and if you find it in the poem, or the lines between the poem, because sometimes it's something that's there, but you can't really find it in the poem, if you know what I mean. And I think that's a way that you can read your student. You can tell them, find it. If you feel that, if you feel sadness, find me the line where you feel sadness. And then they can, I don't want to say analyze, because I really don't like that word, but like determine or identify why you feel that way. And then that's a way you can grade. You don't necessarily need to grade on they got the right answer. Check. It's too formulaic.
You established that the condition for poetry is sitting, relaxing, silence, introspection. These are things that are very uncommon to youth nowadays, to sit and just think in silence about their lives. Do you feel like that's why it's so beneficial for the brain, that to have this time of silence?
It's definitely something that students need to be open to. It's like a break. We do as a start and we read and we do what we like, and students are actually quiet, so that's somewhere where you can start. You can start by reading it silently, then reading it with the class, and trying to talk about it, because by doing so, you break that routine that students have every day of I'm on the phone, or I'm doing this, and it's always so hectic, especially in high school when you're dealing with a lot of things. And I think that moment to cool down and read something that you like, or something that the teacher wants you to read, it allows you to think about and process those feelings or those emotions from the day. It's a way for you to just calm down.
How do you feel about poems that aren't meant to relax you, like poems that are meant to agitate you, or like make you feel like not like the opposite of that?
No. Poems are meant to make you feel so many feelings. And that's exactly what I say in the presentation. You're 100% entitled to those feelings. That's why you can be agitated, you can read it. And that's why I was saying, you know, we shouldn't read it silently, we should read it as a whole class. Because as a whole class, you get something different from the poem than you got when you were reading it alone. And yes, you can have that time to read alone at home, whenever you want to read poetry, but by the simple fact of reading it as a class and experiencing those feelings with a class, you see that you're not the only one feeling it. And so those feelings of being alone, of being vulnerable or insecure, you're not feeling yourself. Everyone's feeling that way. So it's a sense of a group, of togetherness. No more questions.